again, I have the honor and the pleasure to be on the last slot. I have been doing my first session on the first slot, so here I am having you and closing for myself this conference. I hope you had a good time, like I did. What we are going to talk about today. Obviously, we are going to learn how to develop for the Apple Watch, and we're going to take skill sets from the .NET world, and we will use Xamarin. And I think that by the time you are leaving this session, you will know a little bit about how to start. And with that, I would like to also say that the tooling is also in a bit fragile state at the moment. So I might have to restart Visual Studio for Mac, which is a bit of a bummer. But this is what you have to do, I guess. I don't know if you remember this dialogue between Tim Cook and this gorgeous model. So this was on the day they unveiled the Apple Watch, about 2.5 years. And what was like really into my eyes was that at the first they showed a video, like a promotion video for the Apple Watch. She was doing a half marathon run in Africa. Everything for a good cause, obviously, to raise awareness about the poverty of the African woman and everything. And they were like showing her running in Africa with her shiny new Apple Watch. And on the sides, poor African children like clapping from the sides. And I thought, wow, this doesn't look good. Are they really serious? And to make things even worse, Tim Cook invited her to the stage. Her name is, I forgot. But he invited her to the stage, Christy Tollington. And they had like a very awkward dialogue between them, like so made out that it was so obvious to see that they were like practicing it and it was so unnatural. And after that, Tim showed all the prices of the new Apple Watch. And while some of them are reasonably priced by Apple standards, they even showed like $10,000 Apple Watch with gold and diamonds and whatsoever. And I was really such bad taste, showing us the poor African kids, and now $10,000 watch. So I was a bit turned off by this. And even though I really liked Apple products, I put it aside. And after a few months, I was driving in my car, and I was thinking about a presentation that I can do to increase the sessions I can deliver. And then I heard a commercial on the radio that they are selling the Apple Watch. And I said, that might be an interesting idea for a session. I didn't really delve into the development story of the Apple Watch so far. And I've done sessions on Microsoft Band, rest in peace, and Fitbit development. And I said, oh, this would be a really nice addition. And I could have done this session in Xcode, in Swift, Objective-C, but I said, why not do it in a different perspective for .NET developers that are using Xamarin? And then I can take both things that I like to do. So about myself, my name is Ariel. I'm from Israel. I'm a founder of a company called Code Value. I'm doing there a lot of mobile stuff. And I'm also the admin of the Israeli .NET user group. Obviously, I speak at conferences in Israel and around the world. And I think the most important is that I'm a developer like you are, and I enjoy developing and I'm enjoying sharing with you. And I think this is what makes us a community, and I'm happy to be here. Okay, so first let's talk about the Apple Watch. The first thing you need to understand about the Apple Watch is that first it's like a second screen to your iOS application, the iPhone app. how I would pronounce it now. And it's really, you need to take under consideration that building for the Apple Watch is different than building for the iOS application. First, obviously, it's much smaller screen, right? So replicating the same behavior, the same features you have on your iOS application will not work in many things. Why? First, the users that are working with the watch, they measure the time and they are acting on the watch like for 2 seconds. So if you have a flow that is longer than 2 seconds, you probably outdo yourself. And the experience on the watch will be very cumbersome for your users. So the first thing you need to do when you are starting with Apple Watch development is to plan what kind of application you are building. And you really want to focus about maybe the greatest feature that will make more sense when it is being used on the Apple Watch. For example, in this Reminders app, we have here the application. I think I have also this one, no? Or something. I don't know. I will point it with my hands. So we have the Reminders application. So first you can see that it doesn't list all the reminders I have from the beginning of life. So if it's on the phone, it needs to be timely. It needs to be what really matters to me now. I'm looking at it now. It needs to help me deliver the flow that I'm trying to do now, the action, the goal that I'm trying to do now. Maybe it will also show some of the items later. But first, it will concentrate on the most thing that will come next. Second, we have the reminders. This is the second pillar of an Apple Watch application. Notifications are really important because they extend the behavior of the iOS app, and they will take our attention when we are not using the iPhone app. We are not using the iPhone. So we can, like, if we are running or in the middle of playing with our children, we can glance on the notification and be updated, and we can also interact with it for those 2 seconds, as I told, and be done with it and carry on for our next goal. So notifications are really important, and you can customize them and make them really great in your application. The third is a feature called complications, and this is a fundamental part of the Apple Watch. So every, what is called a face, this is what we have seen when we look at the phone, has a few segments, areas of complications where applications can put information on. In this case, in the middle of the face, we see the next reminder. So this is a great way to increase the discoverability of your application and bring information to the user, necessary information that will help him. So also, another benefit is that your application will receive much better frequency of updates when it is installed to the face, allowing you to get information and updates much quicker. So in the end, what you really want to do is think about what the people really want to see from your application on their watch. So this is a different state of mind maybe from what we are used to in our applications. So as I said, we want to be very timely. We want to bring information that are just in time, what's important for us. We want it to be personalized, like those reminders we've seen. So the experience will be really to help the user achieve his goals. So, by the raise of the hands, how many people here are .NET developers in the room? So, almost all of you. And that is nice. How many have developed for iOS? Crickets. Nobody. So, you see, you're the perfect audience for this talk. because you're now able, I'm opening you a window, bad joke, so you can take your existing Microsoft knowledge, the existing .NET knowledge you have, the languages, the third parties, you can take the great features we have on .NET like async await and link, and then you can port it over to the iOS world. And not only for building iOS application, but also to target this prestigious Apple-ish device, right? So this is pretty much an opportunity for us. So the Xamarin approach is that we are able to take our C# code, our skill sets, right? And now we have a shared base code that we can share across those platforms. Of course, when we are talking on the Apple Watch in specific, it's a bit, you can't take a lot of the code since most of it are platform specific, as we will see next. But some parts of the code like communications and serialization, you can take them and share between all your devices. So if you have, for example, an Android device, Android Gear or watch or whatever, you can share some of the code between them. And of course, it's also from the regular applications you can use. So we have like 100% of all the native API capabilities of iOS and the Apple Watch to our disposal, so you're not compromising anything if you go to the Xamarin route instead of the regular Xcode. And of course, with Xamarin, the most important thing is that you still get the performance of a native application because it's a native application. That's very logical. So the way it works is that when we are using Visual Studio on Visual Studio for Mac, on Android, for example, we are getting a binary that will be run on the Android with the runtime. And on iOS, we will getting a precompiled version of the binary, which is very similar to the package if you have done it in Xcode. So when you publish this to Apple, it's pretty much the same. They can't really make a difference between a package that was developed with Visual Studio or a package that was developed with Xcode. And this is very important for us and for you to know. So, back to the watch. The architecture of a watch. So, when you will start a new application, you will most likely have 3 projects in your solution. First one is the iOS app, because for every watch application, you also have the companion iOS app. And you have a project which will contain the user interface of the watch, and another one that will contain the logic, the UI logic of the watch. If we're talking about the first release of the device on watchOS 1, it was very separated between those two, meaning that the UI was running on the watch, but the logic was running on your phone. So if you launch your application, you press the button, the code was actually executing on your iPhone. So the CPU, the memory, everything was on your iPhone. And probably because they really wanted to conserve the battery and the watch itself wasn't as strong as it is now. But it was very limited. You can imagine that if you are now going to a run and you are leaving your phone at home or your phone is not available, then your app is not functional. So obviously this needs to be rectified. And since version 2 of the OS, now the watch is hosting also the extension code. So when we are talking about the recent versions, then it is no longer necessary. And the code will be running on the watch itself, taking the CPU, the battery, and the memory of the watch. Starting from version 4, which was released only about a month ago, things have even improved. Because on version 2 and 3, they still kept those two code bases on different processes. So when you called from the button to the code, it was still going to cross a process to get there. So starting with version 4, they no longer, so it's like the old joke about from version 1 to version 2, we just remove the sleep commands. So now everything works faster. So this is again true here, because the performance in watchOS 4 is much better, because now it doesn't cross boundaries anymore. It's now hosted in the same process. But still, for our code base, we will have those 3 projects. So let's see how it looks like. I will close this solution now. And we create a new project. So first we need to create a new iOS app. Oh, that's a problem. I need to get to the create key. Oh, here it is. So let's call this watch app. Not WhatsApp, watch app. WhatsApp was a different session. And let's put it in temp. Oops. Let's create it. And so this will create a simple iOS app. Nothing to write home about. However, now, when we are doing add new project, we're having the option of creating a watchOS app. So let's click next. Let's call it build stuff. And just for the sake of it, we will include those features. So you will see what is generated. Let's create. So also another bit of a warning. The designer of the Visual Studio for Mac sometimes doesn't work. Thankfully, we have the ability to run it on, to open the storyboards on Xcode. So I will do this if I see if it takes a long time. But hopefully it will work. So this is the iPhone app. We don't really need it. Oops. Don't really need it. And this is the UI part of our code. So we have here the storyboard. And let's see if it will work. And here we will see all the screens and all what is available for the UI. And over here we have all the controllers. This is the basic business logic of the app. So interface controller will be the controller that will be hit on the first page of the phone of the watch application. And we have here, so okay, the extension delegate is really the root. On every iPhone apps, we have the app delegate. And for iPhone, for iPad, for example, this will be like the first code that will be running, the main, if you can call it. So for the watch, we have this extension delegate. It's much lighter, much simpler, because the life cycle of the watch is much simpler. Let's see if it was opened already. I don't know. Too small. No. Let's open it with Xcode real quick. Okay. So we can see that the generated template created for us the first view. And if we will click here, the resolution is really making things difficult. So over here we can see, because I told the template to generate notifications for me, it also created some UI for the notifications. You see? And we have a controller for those notifications, so we can add behavior and we can handle code, buttons, and we can enrich the experience of our notifications. We have the complication controller that this will be called for us to register all the complication that this application will support, and we will decide on what kind of data we will put there. So we will see an example for this real quick. All right, so let's close this. We don't really need it anymore. And let's open this demo. And let's back for the slides. So the next thing I want to talk about is building the user interface with the watch. And we have from the platform, we have a set of elements that we can use. On previous versions of the watch, we will be able to take those elements and use them in vertical or horizontal alignments and order. But from the last version, we are able to have them overlapping each other. So this opens up potential of creating a much more complex UIs and elements on top of elements. So we can enrich the UI much further. So let's try to see it in action first. Let's run this. And while it is running, I will try to show you the storyboard as well. Okay, so the application is launched. And we have here a small menu that we can now browse the gallery of elements that is at our disposal. For example, those are styled labels that we can use. And styling the labels is actually very important, because one thing that we really need to emphasize when we're developing for the watch is it needs to be very, very readable in different kinds of weather. So imagine the rare occasion you have sunlight here, then you need to go and make sure that even with bright sunlight, your text is still readable, right? Typography and readability of the text is highly important when we're talking about watch applications. And we have different kinds of buttons that we can use, kind of switches, elements that we can have them continuously or with discrete steps. We can put images, videos. This was not filmed in Israel. We have a mapping control we can use. And you can enrich your app with gestures, because it is totally touch interface as well. And this allows us to build different UIs with those elements. So the storyboard for that application is rather complex. To remove this one. No, why should it work? Oh, this one. And you can see all those views are in the storyboard. So this is the iOS way of creating a UI. Okay, good. So let's close this. And we'll talk about notifications. So when we're talking about notification, we've seen the generated UI that you can use, the code that you can put there. But then you need to understand the different kinds of notifications in the ecosystem. First, you need to understand the difference between notification that arises from the local devices and notifications that are coming as push notifications from your server. And depending on your user and how it is using the iOS app or the watch app, the iOS will decide where to put the notification. So if your user is now interacting with the iPhone, it will see the notification there. But in the case that is now running or doing something else, or is not using the phone, the notification will be pushed to the device, to the Apple Watch, and it will be displayed there. So you can't really know if the notification will necessarily come to your Apple Watch or to the iPhone app. Only on this case, when you create a notification on the Apple Watch, then it will always be on the Apple Watch. Only on this case. All right, complications. So, as we said, each phone face defines the areas that is willing to accept complications, and each has definitions, and you can see they vary between sizes. Some are very large, and some are very, very small, like the left one. And it's up to you to decide which one of them to support. I recommend that you support as many as possible. However, do not force it. Don't put information that will just confuse the user. In the worst case, just put the name of your app, so the user will be able to launch it for example, from the left side. But in case you have information that is relevant to the user, then by all means put it on the big zones or in the medium ones. So let's see an example for this. So in this application, let me run it real quick. You can see how it works. So this application actually planned a lot of data into the complications, but I want to show you first that if I edit this message, for example, I watch, and call this method, now you see on the centerpiece, it said that you typed "Hi watch," and I can press it to return to the application anytime I want. So it also used as displaying interesting information and as a launcher for your application. So if I put now a basketball, because I heard basketball is really the top one sport here, also the second, the third. So we really want it to be on the watch now, right? And if we use a different face, we can see it put here these 13 minutes because we're 13 minutes past 4. And this is how the other parts in smaller pieces behave with this application. If you are running the watch app and you select the face, here you have the ability for the user to select which application to put in which area of the face. So over here you have like a selection of application. So you want your application to be visible here in as many sizes as possible. This will increase your users' awareness of your application. So let's try to see some code if I can squeeze some things here. So this is the controller of the UI, this one. So when you press this edit message button, we ask the platform to create this dialog that we can enter data, we can enter the text, and we just save it to the UI. Later, when the user is clicking the button, it is just running over all the active complication on the face, and it is asking the platform, the OS, to update them. So this is something you can also do in a background data that you want to update your application when the user is not using it. After a time, the OS will schedule a call to this complication controller, and it will call this method. So by using this attribute, the runtime knows which class of view to use. And over here, you pretty much need to place all the implementation for each size of the complication. So the text, we put it here for the modular large size. And we take the text that was entered by the user from where we stored it back in the first controller, and we can create this template with the text, and that's how it is being updated to the face watch. Okay. Okay. I assume that everything is clear. All right, so we've seen nice stuff, but now it is time to put everything together. And I'm really proud to introduce you to the product that we are trying to develop now. And this product is really safe, don't worry about it. It's been tested, and it has a huge potential because we are targeting worried parents, which are like most of the parents, and we're targeting babies that want to be up to date and using the best gadgets around, right? So, what features are we going to offer for this application? First, we want our babies to work out. No one wants lazy babies, right? So, people use this watch application to measure swimming or running, but we will measure crawling. This makes sense for babies, I guess. Second, for parents that are too busy to, they are playing games or they are coding and they don't remember that sometimes you need to go change the diapers, we will put notification on the watch so they will remember it is time to go and check if it is time. And the third feature that we will implement now, we're going to measure the feeding times of the baby because it's really important to collect this data and make sure that the baby eat as much as it can and growing. However, for the next version, we have great ideas already, and you're welcome to share with me more ideas. For example, we thought about launching Siri when the baby cries. Maybe she could like sing for him, put him to sleep. There's a lot of potential here. Haptic disciplining. So if the baby is misbehaving, we can run the vibration on his hand. So after a few times, he will understand this behavior is not acceptable. Okay? So there's tremendous potential here, and I'm sure that you are loving it as much as I do. So I think it's time that we will start coding it, right? So let's make sure that I'm on the right step. I am. We have here, and again, the 3 projects that we usually have. If I'll show you the user interface real quick, let's see if it will open up. It might have opened up. I don't see it. So let's see it on Xcode again. I will not fight Visual Studio. It's very likely that I will have to restart it soon. So, all right. So here we have our 3 first screens that we're going to use. Okay, like this. So here we have some kind of a menu. Navigation menu, and we have 2 views. One is that we will keep track of the feeding of the baby. So this button, we will measure, we will start a timer, and we will measure how much time the baby is eating. And when the baby will stop eat, we will press this button, and we can log now this information. The second is we have the workout view, that when the baby is now in his workout, we can start the session, And now we can collect different metrics of the sensors on the watch. And we can now store it into with the HealthKit API into the Health app. And we can also do nice things with that. In the end, I will show you how I will integrate reactive extensions in order to create rules if we want to check extreme situations of the baby, like his heart rate is going up or down, and we want to be notified when it happens. So this is the UI that we've built, and very hard to see like this, but we have here elements, and we have this timer that we've configured to show hour, minute, seconds. I thought days will be not necessary here, right? Usually babies don't eat for days straight. And we have those buttons that are hooked up to the controllers. Let's see if I can, oh, you can see here the events, the on start, and the on end of the button. So over here, we have having 3 controllers. This is the feeding controller, which is empty right now, will be for the that view, and the workout controller for the workout view. And the interface controller, as we said, is the first one that we interact with. So we are adding to the table 2 elements. And when we select a row, we will just push controller. This will use the navigation, the automatic navigation of the watch. And for example, it will have the back button automatically for us. So we can return always to the table and navigate between all those 3 views. Okay, that makes sense? Okay, so let's run this now. And see if what we did works. So we have this little 2 fits icon. And now this is the first view that we have created, this table. We added those 2 strings into this table. And now when we are clicking it, we are pushing and back and forward. So that's the first step. Yes, reload. Okay, so for the next step, we're going to implement the feeding controller. We're going to implement what's going on when the user tap on the start, and what's going on when what will occur when he will tap on the end. But before I will dive into the details, I've implemented a mechanism of communication between the iPhone application, the companion app, and the watch. So what I did is, we have this session manager, and this file is shared between the iPhone app and the extension. So you see, it is the same file, it is linked. And with ifdef, I'm able to distinguish between those 2. And it will use on the SDK an object calling WC session, which will allow us to create a connection between, a sustainable connection between the iPhone and the watch while they are connected together by Bluetooth. So when we are calling this method, update application context, we are sending some data. We are serializing it by using JSON.NET, which we love. You can't not love JSON.NET. And then we call this method on the session. On the other side, this method will be called. And here we parse the data, and we just execute an event. So any recipient for this data can subscribe to this event. In this case, the iPhone app controller over here can subscribe to this event and receive the information. And you update it to the UI. Back to the Apple Watch code. When we start the timer, we save the time that we started, and when we are ending, we just clean the UI and sending to the iPhone app the time now and the time that we've started. Okay? So let's see if it will run. So we have one error, and this is courtesy of Visual Studio. And I will close it up. And hopefully it is the first and the last time that I have to do this. So apologizes. So let's try it again. And unless the beer gods are not with me, it will work. Okay. Surprise, surprise, now it runs. It's only to make things interesting here, right? So let's open up also the iPhone app. And we can start eating. So the timer is running now. And I think the baby ate enough. So, and when we did it, it was sending this message to the iPhone, and it was added to the controller. So we have connection working between the iOS app and the watch, and we have a very small, simple interaction. So that's good. So now it is time for us to implement the next step. And this one is a bit more heavy, so I prepare you for a lot of code now, which was impossible for me to live code if you are interested. So the workout controller, first, it's much simpler, or it would close the UI. So it's much simpler, as you can remember. We have one toggle button that we start the activity. Let me run this real quick so you can see. And when we are toggling the start of the workout, okay, we have this toggle button. Let's run it. Hopefully, we will start to see information here. All right. So we see the sensors have started to give us samples. So we see the simulator is now just pushing data for us. So it simulates heart rate and energy usage. And if I look at this health app on the iOS, when I end the session, the data here, bless you, the data here will be updated to this data, because everything is being saved on this private store of the health kit. So to start working with the health kit, you need first to define that you want to use it. And in this entitlement plist, you are able to enable the health kit, but then you will need also a certificate. I warn you from advance. Another thing you want to do at the app delegate is declare that you would like permission to access several of the types that are represented in the health kit. So here we would like to access heart rate. We would like to access the active energy burned. And what the user will see the first time those apps will be launched are those views. So the user will need to explicitly approve, and both on the iPhone and the watch, that is willing that your app will access those data, because then you will be also able to read it or write to it or both. So your app also needs to take under consideration that some parents will not want to track their baby's workout for some reason. Okay, I don't know. Such bad parents exist, but maybe. So, so you need to request authorization, basically, both on the iPhone, and if we go to the workout controller, we will see it as well here. This is all part of the health SDK, the health package. Okay, so what happens when we press this toggle button? So the first is that we are clearing the UI a little bit, and then we are configuring what kind of activity we want to do. From some obscure reason that I don't know why, Apple hasn't had the ability to see into the future and understand that babies are also using this application, and crawling is not part of this enum. This is a disaster for us, but I think walking is close enough, right? Most babies will walk after. So it's fine, I guess, to this application. And I also set it to be indoors because most babies are indoors because it's cold. But on the next version, we can support outdoor as well. Outdoors calling can be nice. So with this configuration, we create the session, and we call the start workout session. What this will do, we are going to be called into this change state method because we implement some kind of an interface here. This workout session delegate. So the SDK will call to us, and then when we're getting the green light that we are running, we can call the begin workout. So over here in the begin workout, this is the complex thing. We are creating the type that we are wanting to control, the energy type and the hour and the heart rate, and we register this method because this will be called every time we get a new sample from the sensors, from the HealthKit API. So here we can handle the data that is coming. So we just collect all the samples. We save the heart rate that we are seeing. We summarize the energy that is being used, and we can update the UI here. So here we update the total energy that is being used so far. So here is where we register this method to the different objects. And over here, we will execute this query on the health store, and this will register this code, and we will start receiving those samples. So it's a bit complex, I know. But the flow is very similar. We define what we want, we start, we get the method that we have been starting. We are now able to query those types that we asked for, and we will receive to callback the data itself. And when we want to complete the workout, we will just clean everything. We tell the health store to stop, and we can save now everything, all the data that we've collected to the health store. Okay, we create this workout object with all the data, and we save it. And then it will be also here in this database. So I promised you some reactive extensions before we complete. So what I did is I used, everyone here used reactive extensions before? A little bit of you. So to make things short, reactive extensions, usually you have an observable you can subscribe to. It's like the data source. And you have an observer that will be called, that is like the agent that you subscribe with. And the subject is an object that is both observer and observable. So what I can do here is create some rules. I subscribe to this heart rate, and I am adding a condition. So every heart rate above 30 is considered dangerous. Why? Because I want it to work in the demo. Otherwise, it will not work. So let's run it while I explain it to you, because we're almost out of time. So, and here this is how we respond to when a heart rate is above 30. In this case, we are just updating the iPhone app by calling the session manager again. So let's run here the iPhone app real quick. And hopefully we will see it now because it's above 30. So every time we get a dangerous heart rate, we are updating the iOS app. And here we can do a lot of things. We can create a notification and alert the sleeping parents or whatever. This is how I supply values into this channel that I've created. Just calling the onNext here because it's also an observer, and I'm giving it the heart rate, and that's enough. This is our usage of reactive extension. And for our last magic here, I want to show you a notification. I'm going to delete this because I want to make sure it will build and update it. So over here, what I did is, sorry, wrong controller. So when we are activating this main controller that we have, we are registering a notification that should pop out after 10 seconds. This is the riskiest demo here. All right, it works. I'm happy. Everything worked. So we see here we have some notification, that's a local notification. And this is the code that I was using to create it. I'm using here the underlying platform to do this. Sorry, jumped over here. We have the notification center, and we have this add notification request with this trigger that this is like the 10 seconds, and here you can put any interval that you would like the notification to happen. And you can also do recurrent notifications like we should have here. And you can also respond to those notifications as well down here. This delegate will, so depending on what the user will press, discard or custom buttons that you've added, you can also treat here. All right, so it's time to wrap up. So we've talked about what is to develop for the App Watch, how to take your existing .NET reactive extension knowledge into developing for iOS watch applications. And we've created a great application for babies. I think everyone can say so without a doubt. In this link, you can find the code that I've showed here. You can browse it. And if you have any questions, we have one here. What if the baby would like the vibration? I mean, he may intentionally start acting bad, doesn't he? That's true. So part of the feature of the haptic disciplining would be to maybe randomize it. So the baby will always try to be on his best. Yeah, I think so. This is a good feature. Other questions? I'm happy to take. Yes?
What about complications name? Why did they name it like that? Have you ever considered this? Just files, right? Or what they name?
Yeah, so complication has different sizes. And so they try to, I guess, take names that make sense to you when you're developing. That, okay, this is a medium one and a small one. That my guess is. But you can guess, and might be as better as mine. Yeah, other questions?
You can only build that on Mac, right?
No, but you need a Mac. So everyone needs a Mac, but you can have it somewhere in a storage in the network. You can use Visual Studio on Windows and connect those two together, and it actually works. Not on this hotel network. I tell you for sure it doesn't work, but probably in your office, on your home, it will work, and you can use it. You can use Windows for that, but you will need somewhere along the way a Mac. All right. Achu? All right, so I hope to see, yeah, sure.
I have another question about
Yeah.
Visual Studio on Mac.
As you've seen in this session, it's ups and downs. Basically, Xamarin Studio rebranded in a way, if I can be rude a little bit. But they are making a lot of efforts into it, improving the designers, improving Xamarin Forms, and the rest of the features, .NET Core. So basically, Xamarin or Visual Studio for Mac is really getting a lot of attention now.
You could have done this in code also, or they don't support code?
You mean instead of the storyboard?
So the application, can you also write it?
Visual Studio Code. I think not, because you need the compiler of Xamarin. Maybe you can hook up command line. It might work. Might be not as easy to configure. I never tried, but probably it can work. Yeah. You might have to work a bit hard for that. Okay, so thank you again. Wish you the rest of the conference, like an hour of fun and after. And thank you so much for coming, and see you next time.